And then I did get, I think I sent you guys a message on Friday. I did get your YouTube channel playlist up and running, and it is up to date up to last week's lecture. So you can just search my YouTube channel, and I've got your nutrition class as a new playlist, and I've taken the old stuff down.
Is
All right.
The lipids and fatty acids PowerPoint?
Yes, lipids and fatty acids. All right, so fats and fatty acids are the second energy-producing nutrient that we'll be discussing. The functions of fat, every PowerPoint is pretty much put together the same way. We talk about what does it do, how does your body break it down, and then what happens if we don't have enough or if we have too much. So the function of fat is the primary form of stored energy. Well, we know that adipose tissue is fat. We also know that fat makes up some pretty important stuff like our cell membrane. Remember a million years ago when we were first beginning anatomy and physiology class? God, doesn't it feel like a million years ago? The phospho what? Lipid bilayer. It is the lipid component of our cell membrane that really regulates what can go in and out of our cells. We know that fat protects some of our organs, specifically organs like our kidneys. Kidneys are contained inside of a specific fat capsule. And in fact, kidneys are very dependent on fat to work normally. So if you have an animal who is emaciated, right, who has not been getting nutrition, one of the things that we need to check is their kidney function, because not having that fat causes their kidneys to shut down. Fat is also going to aid in the transmission of nerve impulses. In fact, I don't think you guys have not gotten to the nervous system yet. You're still on what, the cardiovascular system? You started the cardiovascular system? Oh my God, I'm so jealous. The heart is one of my favorite things. So cool. But, so for our nerves, we talked a little bit about this. If my forearm is like a nerve, I have my dendrites, which receive impulses. I have my nucleus, which is also known as the soma. I have my axon body, which transmits the nerve impulse, and then it skips over a little space to the next nerve. Well, covering all of our nerves is a sheath called the myelin sheath. And myelin just helps to speed up the transmission. You can have issues with this fatty covering of myelin, and it will slow or even stop the nerve impulse. In fact, there is a disease where the myelin sheath of the nerves in your brain starts to erode. It's called multiple sclerosis. And it is a degenerative disease that will then interrupt the nerve's ability to pass on messages. Most importantly, though, fat makes stuff taste good. Now, when we're looking at breaking down fat, in comparison to the breakdown of carbohydrates, fat is so much more complicated to break down and transport. Because we still need to transport it in our blood, right? We're still breaking fat down in the intestines, just like we talked about with the carbs. We're still uploading it into the blood. But remember, our blood is primarily made of what? Water. How well do fat and water mix? They don't. Do I want big globules of fat going through my blood vessels? No. So I have to repackage it into something that is safer to transport. And so it takes a lot more effort to repackage the fat to transport, and then you have to unpackage it and then repackage it again. Fat is really very difficult for our bodies to use, considering how easily our bodies are able to do that. I find that pretty fascinating. Yes?
So when they they make the fat easier to go through the veins, vessels, and whatever. Is that what causes heart attacks when it ends up blobbing up?
So yeah, there's 1,087,000,087 things that can cause a heart attack. One of them could be, though, is a big blockage that is occluding the blood supply. Primary thing, it's not so much the blood flowing through the heart. Yes, you can have valve issues, right? You guys are learning your valvular anatomy. On the right side, you have your tricuspid. Left side, you have your bicuspid. And then between the heart and your lungs, you have the pulmonary semilunar. And then between your heart and your body, you have the aortic semilunar. So any one of those four valves can have an issue. Where we really start to see cardiac damage is the heart itself is a muscle. So the heart itself needs oxygen, and it's not getting the oxygen from the blood flowing through the chambers. That's just the pump. I have a whole blood vessel recirculation that takes blood from the aorta and feeds it back into the tissue of the heart. And that's known as the coronary circulation. If one of those blood vessels gets occluded, we don't get any oxygen, we don't get any nutrients, and we know just how well does tissue live without oxygen. It doesn't. And so you're going to start to have part of your cardiac tissue die off. And then instead of those heart muscle cells able to coordinate, now we have one area that is not pumping at all, and we end up with the spaghetti heart. And so that would be another form of a cardiac heart attack. And in fact, crazy, with the fat going into circulation and being, it gets repackaged into something called a chylomicron. We'll talk about that here in a minute. If you have an animal that is super obese, clinically obese, remember clinical obesity is where we're starting to see other body structures getting affected. I have had animals, oh, this is disgusting, where you go to pull blood, right? You pull their blood sample, and then you let it sit because you need to separate out, right? You want the cells and the liquid, because I'm going to draw off the liquid, either plasma or serum, depending on what tube I used, and I'm going to use that to run any blood work. When it settles out, the serum or the plasma, what color should it be?
Straw.
It should be like a honey straw, very light yellow color. In our clinically obese, it'll be white and milky because of the fat content. Yeah, and you can't run any diagnostics on that. You can't run blood work on that. It's gross. That you got to send off for a special analysis. So for you little visual learners, here's a picture of it being used as storage. I know, look at this poor animal. This animal is a big old 5. If we're looking at the
Oh
body.
my gosh, that dog is huge.
Dog, that is animal cruelty.
Yeah.
In anybody's book. That is no different than if you see a dog and all of his bones are sticking out and he's emaciated. That's animal cruelty right there.
Mm-hmm.
Had a dog, just kind of a fun story. Actually, it's kind of an interesting story to demonstrate. Don't judge. We're not in the position to judge. So we had an owner bring a brand new client, brand new dog, never met these people before. It was a Sheltie, so Shetland sheepdog. And it was a rather small Sheltie. Her optimal weight probably should have been about 20 pounds. She weighed close to 50. She couldn't walk. They brought her in, you know, those little Red Ryder wagons.
Oh my God.
So they had pillows, and the dog was laying on these pillows, and they dragged her in on the wagon. And her legs could not support her weight. We got her up on the scale, and her legs literally collapsed under the weight of her body. The simple action of trying to stand for just a few seconds, she was panting like she'd just gone on a 10-mile hike. Cyanotic. Because her little heart is not strong enough to pump blood through that volume of body tissue. So what would your first reaction as a technician be? Well, not as a technician, let me rephrase that. What would your first action as a human being be? This dog is fat. How dare you?
Yeah.
How could you do this to this animal? This is animal cruelty. You're a terrible pet owner.
Cuss the owner out.
Yeah, mentally I'm cursing the owner out. How is this possible? How do you not see this happening? Okay, well, here's my life lesson to you. Don't judge. Because what ended up happening wasn't their dog. The dog belonged to one of their neighbors. And she was an outside dog. They would just literally throw a bag of open food and just throw it out underneath. They had this little dog shelter. And they would just throw this open bag, 10-pound bag of food, and then she could just eat as much as she wanted. And never interacted. She was completely matted. She was completely just horrible condition. And this woman, who ended up being just the most angelic, kind person I've ever met in my life, and she brings me to tears just thinking about her. She went to the owners and said, look, I would love to have this dog. What would it take? What can I pay you for this dog? And they ended up, she bought the dog, immediately went, got it groomed, and then brought her to the clinic. So we put her, the dog's name was Judy. Dog's name is Judy. So we put Judy on a very strict obesity weight loss diet. We had a computer program that she was following. Obviously, how do you exercise this dog? You don't. But as she's laying down, I can take and move her legs. And then we would roll her over and we would move her other legs. And we would pull just so that she'd get resistance, because they don't want you to pull their feet. And that resistance was exercise. This woman not only followed the diet to the letter, she was at the point where she was measuring kibble. And if one kibble was a little bit bigger, she would find another one that was a little bit smaller. Within a year and a half, the dog was down, still a little bit overweight, but the dog was down to a manageable weight and walked in on her own and was so proud. Oh my goodness, little Judy. And she was always groomed to the nines. She had more clothing than I did. She had a different collar depending on her mood. And she would come in just proud as punch. I was so pretty. But it just goes to show, don't judge.
So when dogs get that big, humans get that big, and then they lose a lot of weight, they have extra skin, and they have to remove it. Does that happen to dogs too, when they lose a lot of weight?
That's a fabulous question. So Zoomers, if you didn't hear that, the question was, in people, when you have lose a lot of weight, you get the loose skin, you have to have it removed. We don't normally do that in our dogs. And the fact she was a long-haired dog, so you really didn't notice the loose skin. So we don't do the skin removal that we do in our humans. It doesn't impact them.
So with obese dogs like that, could you also do it's probably really expensive, but so hydrotherapy where they walk in the water?
Yes, hydrotherapy, swimming therapy. Because in fact, hydrotherapy, if you have the ability, would be the best bet because it takes all the pressure and stress off of the joints. Dog is buoyant, and so we're not putting that stress and strain, and you get the resistance of the water. So yes, that would be the best way to exercise these animals. Yeah, there's my story of Judy.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Are we gonna go over the nerve impulses again? Because I wasn't really sure on that.
So with the nerve impulses, we have a sheath on our nerves called the myelin sheath. You don't have to furiously write it down. It's just mainly so you've heard it when you get to the nervous system and anatomy. So we have this myelin sheath. And in fact, right here, I have a picture of a nerve. Let me get my. So these are the dendrites that are all receiving a message. This is the nucleus that interprets the message. This is the axon body that transmits the message. This is the terminal button that takes the message to another dendrite. Now there is a covering, a coating on this part of the neuron, the axon body, and it's called the myelin sheath. And its job is just to speed up the transmission and make sure that the message is being sent correctly down the nerve. And that myelin sheath is made of fat. Here I've got a dog that's insulated. We're using fat as our insulation. And then here, this is a kind of a cool picture. Right here I have a kidney. And you see all this white stuff right here? That is the capsule. So imagine what I did. Mentally fold this back down over, and what I've done is I've taken that capsule and opened it like this. Do you see all this yellow? It's all fat. It is a little excessive on this one. That is a little excessive amount of fat. But we do have this fat capsule that helps to protect our kidneys.
That's all the kidneys? This picture is of the kidneys?
Yeah, this is a picture of a kidney. That's the kidney right there. And then this is the open fat capsule, and this is all the fat that was inside of it. And fat makes stuff taste good. Kind of the most important in my opinion. And I just did this picture to torture you because it amuses me. Oh my goodness, I might need to get me some poutine for dinner tonight.
I am starving myself. This is just torture.
I know.
Those fries look.
It amuses me. Oh yeah, heck yeah. I might get some poutine tonight for dinner.
I need those fries.
Bison burgers the other day.
Did you go get some bison burgers at Bubba's? What'd you think?
It was not worth it.
Yeah.
Like, it was,
They were so small.
yeah.
And
Don't do that to Miss Huff. You're crazy.
it was good, but I feel like
I prefer beef. Yeah.
You should go to Papa's Barbecue. That's where they have really good burgers, and the kids' meal burgers are so huge.
She cheated too.
I got you, Miss Huff. Somebody boo that guy.
Boo.
No, they're allowed to feel their feelings. They're allowed to be wrong. They're allowed to be incorrect about Bubba's. Bubba's. Oh.
I don't know. Maybe it was just that day.
Yeah.
Really good.
I don't know what happened to you. Maybe you went to the wrong restaurant.
No, how could you go to the wrong?
You had to have gone to the wrong place because no, they're amazing. They're amazing. But yeah, now my brain, I'm looking at those French fries and now my brain is hooked on poutine. So.
Get you some
What's
loaded nacho fries.
Oh my goodness, poutine is the best comfort food, cold weather food on the planet.
I want to try it.
Oh,
So
it's a Canadian thing. It is thick cut French fries with oxtail gravy and cheese curds. It sounds disgusting, but it is this thick oxtail gravy, and then the cheese curds are just melted, just slightly. Oh, I'm dripping.
So when they say oxtail, are they talking about the actual oxtail, or is it like the ox butt? Because that's what when I hear that, I'm like,
Well, no, oxtail gravy is just from the tail. It is just from the tail of an ox.
because you know sometimes they try to sugarcoat it, and then you end up eating something nasty.
No, it's pretty good. Now, it's called oxtail gravy, although there are a lot of different ways to prepare it. And if you are in the market, if you're over on the like kind of west side of town, there's a fabulous, it's the best poutine I've found so far in Texas. And it's called Tubbs Poutine. Okay, you're not allowed to go there. Neither of you are allowed to go
That's the
there.
other thing, they didn't even have fries there, I think, right?
I think they like charge like $3 extra for it.
Oh, see.
Maybe
You're
it's
not
just
allowed
an
to go.
acquired taste.
You're not allowed to do it. Anybody else though, it's fabulous. You'll love it. It's over there. It's at like Eldridge and Memorial.
Oh, okay.
Right there. There's big Kroger.
Yeah, I know exactly where.
I seen that. I didn't know what it was though.
Right across the street from the Kroger.
Yeah.
Is Tubbs Poutine.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my side of town too. Although that's as close as I'm ever gonna get to telling you where I live.
So we can find you.
That's my Sterlings. My Sterlings, I've been accidentally giving them small clues unintentionally, and they've been putting it together, trying to figure out where I live.
You're in that general area.
They're gonna,
Spring Branch.
yeah. I would live in Mission Bend, A-Leaf,
Oh, okay,
Ish.
so you're a little bit further down.
a little bit further.
Okay, I know
Closer.
exactly.
Closer to
You're
Highway
close
6.
to me, Miss Hall, because I live around there too.
So that's as close as I'm gonna tell. All right, so lipids and fatty acids. Lipids are solid at room temperature. Those are referred to as fats. Lipids that are liquid at room temperature are referred to as oils. I don't think I'm telling you any shocking information with this. I'll give you guys a minute. Have you guys gotten through the OSHA stuff in LabPro yet? Oh, thank goodness. What are you in tow now? Laboratory what?
On microscope.
Oh, okay, the equipment, going over the parts of the microscope, how to use the microscope, that sort of thing.
And so you're the safety officer?
I am the OSHA safety officer for the Vet Tech Institute.
Where's your little bag?
I'm not wearing the badge. If I wore the badge for every hat that I wear here, because I'm the OSHA safety officer, I'm also the radiation safety officer, I'm the RSO. I'm also the equipment, what is that title? The equipment, is it the equipment efficiency manager? I'm in charge of maintaining all of the equipment here on VTI, as far as getting it certified and getting it quality checked and yeah. Job security, man, job security. All right, so our fats, we have our simple fats. These are made up of 3 fatty acids called triglyceride. Called glyceride because they're all held together with this little glob of glycerol. Fat is broken down in the stomach and in the intestines, just like our carbohydrates. But as I said, we can't transport fat, not in the water base of our blood. So we have to repackage it into something that can be transported in a water-based blood environment. And so we repack them into structures called a chylomicron. That's how you say this word, chylomicron. These chylomicrons are then transported to the liver, just like the carbs. The liver unpacks them, does what it needs, and converts and sends the fats that we need to out for circulation. And then anything else is repackaged and sent to the adipose tissue. So there's a lot more steps that have to be taken in order to utilize fat for energy. There's a lot of packaging and unpackaging and repackaging that has to happen. But because of that, we get a lot more calories out of fat, because it takes a lot more energy to do anything with it. fat gives us a lot more calories. In fact, whereas our carbohydrates gave us 4 calories per gram, fats gives us 9 calories per gram, but that's to facilitate the packaging, unpackaging, and repackaging that we need to do in order to use it. We're using a lot more energy. So that's the basics behind our fats. Oh, give you guys a minute, you're furiously writing. What are you guys doing in intro? Anything fun?
I think we start our stethoscope labs.
Yeah, we're
this
supposed
week.
to start our respiratory rate and all that stuff this week.
Awesome. Great little tech tip from me to you. If you want to know where the heart is in the chest, take the front leg and bend it like this, and right at the height of the elbow is going to be the heart. So that's just a fun little way to... It's the what?
Can you do that one more
Yeah,
time?
you're going to listen primarily on the left side of the heart because the heart is shifted towards the left. But you want to listen to the lung and heart sounds bilaterally to compare. So this is a list of the types of fatty acids that we have. You may have heard some of these words. We have saturated fatty acids. In fact, saturated fatty acids are the ones that nutritionally they're like, ooh, those are not good for you. Try and stay away from your saturated fatty acids. The problem is that everything that tastes yummy is a saturated fatty acid. Saturated means that we have nothing but single bonds in between our molecules, in the backbone of this molecule. So saturated, so single bonds. The reason why they say, ooh, try and stay away from saturated fats is because we don't use as much energy breaking apart saturated fats. It doesn't take as much energy to break apart a single bond as it does a double bond. No duh. So if I have nothing but single bonds, I am getting a lot more energy out of that molecule, and all the excess goes to the storage unit. Mono unsaturated means that we have one double bond somewhere in the chain. Poly unsaturated means we have more than one double bond in the chain. Could be 2, could be 5. The more double bonds I have, the more energy my body has to use to break it down. I can't take fat out of the diet. When we were dealing with Judy, you can't take fat out of the diet. It is necessary for the use of other nutrients. But what I can do is give her fats that, just like with our carbohydrates, give her body a little internal workout. So the fats that I'm going to be providing her are going to be polyunsaturated fats. The more double bonds she has to break down, the more energy she is using, the higher her metabolism is having to rev, the less energy is left over. So that's where in our obesity management diet, the polyunsaturated is going to be the way to go. So saturated, only single bonds. Mono unsaturated has one double bond somewhere. Polyunsaturated has more than one double bond somewhere. So for my little visuals, here we have saturated. We have no double bonds, they're all single. Mono unsaturated, we have one double bond. Polyunsaturated, we have more than one. Again, this is the hydrocarbon backbone. hydrocarbon backbone. And right here I have, see, these are all single bonds. And I know one of you is like, but Miss Huff, there's a double bond right there. Well, is this part of the hydrocarbon backbone? It is not. We're only looking at that hydrocarbon backbone. So this would be a saturated. Here, I've got one double bond. So this is unsaturated, otherwise known as mono. If you just say unsaturated, it's just a given that there's one double bond. If I were to add another double bond in here somewhere, then it would be poly, unsaturated. Saturated fats are more common in our animal fat, less common in our vegetable oil. So when I say saturation is increasing, think of the word saturation as the exact same as single bonds. If I say saturation, you think single bonds. Or if I say single bonds, you think saturation. In your minds right now, those two terms are exactly the same. As saturation increases, so as the number of single bonds increases, they become less solid. Well, let's think about that in our minds for a minute. A single bond is less rigid than a double bond. The more single bonds I have, the less rigid the molecule's gonna be. I almost think about it like a cooked noodle versus a raw noodle. Cooked noodle is super floppy. The more single bonds I have, the more floppy it is. The more double bonds I have, the more rigid it's gonna be. So as saturation, single bonds, increases, the fat becomes less solid and more liquid. Did everybody follow me on that? So if you just think about saturation and single bonds as the same thing, if I say saturation is increasing, you immediately know the number of double bonds is increasing. So this length of the chain. So we've now talked about the bonds located in the chain, right? Single versus one double versus multiple double. Now we're going to talk about the overall length of the chain. This has nothing to do with the bonds. This just has to do with the length. There are different ways that we categorize these fats and fatty acids. One way is by the number of double bonds. Another way is by how long is the molecule itself. We got our short chain fatty acids, and these really just are the building blocks. I like to think of fatty acids like a choo-choo train. The short chain fatty acids are what we make up the cars on the train. We're not really going to see the short chain fatty acids being a building block on their own. They are more the building block to make longer and longer chains of fatty acids. Medium chain fatty acids, and then long chain. Medium chains are going to be built out of short chains, because again, you're not really going to see short chains as part of a food. Short chains make up medium and long chains. Medium chain fatty acids are easier to digest. They're shorter. So where we're going to see our medium chain fatty acids are things like mother's milk, because babies, their intestines are not really figuring out how to work yet. We want to make their workload very easy. And so our medium chains, very easy to break down because they're much shorter. Long chain fatty acids are going to be more like our food that we're used to. And the longer the chain, the more palatable or the yummier it's going to be. I'll give you guys a minute. I'm sad we didn't get any snow. It was like 3 years ago. I think it came up on my my Facebook memory. That it was like 2017 when we had the big snow. like the big fat flakes, and it actually stayed on the ground for the next morning. I remember because we got to a school and we had a big snowball fight out in the front parking lot.
My school did that too.
My dog kept trying to eat it.
Your dog kept trying to eat it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had, it was only a little tiny patch that was left. So me, a couple of instructors against a couple of the whatever students, we just went into the lounge. We're like, snowball fight. We all ran outside and just had a big snowball fight. It was so fun.
That isn't the Dippin' Dots thing. We had like 10.
Remember the Dippin' Dots though? Where it was like tiny little balls? It was literally like Dippin' Dots ice cream.
I do remember that. I do remember that. I did. It was more like almost the consistency of hail.
Yeah, it was so tiny.
Tiny. Yeah, I do remember that. Couldn't make a snowball out of
It's
that.
not fun.
Miss, have you said the longer the chain, the more yummy it is?
Yeah, the more palatable it is.
Okay.
So here, our short chains are just building blocks. We're going to use them to build our other chains. Medium chains are going to be easier to break down because we don't have, right? The shorter the chain, the easier it is for your body to use. Some mother's milk, certain foods like cocoa nuts. If you remember, there was a movie way back when with Tom Hanks. Was it Castaway? Where he got a plane crash and he ended up on this deserted island
With Wilson.
with Wilson. Yes, and one of the primary things he had to eat were cocoa nuts. Well, because they are so easy for your body to break down and use, they also give you massive diarrhea. Yeah. Yeah. So they are a natural diarrheal. So if you're having constipation, eat some cocoa nut and it'll soften it up good for you. Long chains are the most common type found in like regular foods, and they are more palatable, meaning they taste better. All right, I think I'm gonna stop it here. We'll pick it up here on tomorrow.